In this project, we'll create a random tone generator with the speaker that you can latch on with the press of a button or press again to turn it off. First, we'll create a variable. This is an int variable, which stands for integer, and that means it can only have whole number values, no decimal places. Next, we name the variable. I've named this press count because that's what this variable is going to stand in for. How many times have we pressed the button? We use the equal sign to give the variable an initial value or a starting value. So we have an integer named press count that's equal to 0. In the void setup function, use the pin mode function with the arguments A5 and output to set your speaker port as an output. Use the pin mode function again on port 6 and set it as an input pull-up for your button. Within the void loop, we first have an if statement, and that has two main parts. Between the parentheses of an if statement is a condition that's checked when the if statement runs. Between the curly braces of the if statement are actions that run when the condition is true. So the condition here is checking the reading from port 6. Is the digital read of port 6 low? When we have a pin mode of input pull-up and a button on port 6, pressing the button sends a low signal. So this if statement is checking, is the button pressed? If it is, then run this line of code that is press count plus plus. And what that does is adds 1 to the value of the press count variable. So on line 3, we create a press count and set it equal to 0. Now with press count plus plus, press count is equal to 1. The delay function with an argument of 250 pauses the code here for 250 milliseconds or 1/4 of a second, which is enough time for you to release your finger from the button so that pressing the button once isn't accidentally counted multiple times by the code. Next, line 16 runs a new if statement, and the condition here is checking is press count equal to 1. If it is, then the code inside the curly braces will run. Here we have a tone function, and tone requires two arguments: the port where you'd like to play the tone, and the hertz value of the tone you'd like to play. In earlier projects, we would use a number for the hertz value, like 1000 to play a tone of 1000 hertz on port A5. Here, we're replacing that number value with a function, the random function. The random function itself has two arguments. The first is the lowest value the random function can select from, and the second is the highest value the random function can select from. So, this random tone could be anywhere from 100 to 999 Hertz that will start playing on the speaker that's plugged into port A5. So the random tone is selected and starts playing on port A5, and then a delay of 70 milliseconds or 0.07 seconds holds that tone playing on the speaker for that long. The else statement is only going to run when the condition of the if statement above it is false. So if press count is not equal to 1, then this code will run, which stops any tones from playing on port A5, and it sets press count equal to 0 again, using this single equal sign. So each time the void loop runs, it's going to run either the actions of this if statement on lines 17 and 18, or the actions of the else statement on 21 and 22. It will never run all of those actions in a single void loop. When the code reaches the end of the void loop with this closing curly brace, it will go back up to line 11 and check the digital read of port 6 again. If button 6 is pressed again, press count will increase by 1. A delay of 250 milliseconds allows you to release your finger from the button, and then this if-else statement will be run, checking the value of press count and then allowing the code to decide what to do. Either select a random tone and play it on port A5, or stop a tone from playing and reset press count to 0. So let's look at how this void loop might run. Press count starts at 0, and if you press down on button 6, it will send a low signal in, so press count will equal 1, and after a delay of a 1/4 second, it will check the condition of this if statement and find that yes, press count is equal to 1, So it will run the code inside this if statement, selecting a random tone from 100 to 999 and playing that on port A5. After a delay of 70 milliseconds, the code will skip over the else statement, reach the bottom of the void loop, jump back up, and check the condition again. If you've released your finger from the button, then port 6 is not sending a low signal, meaning this condition of the first if statement is false. So those actions will get skipped. But press count is still equal to 1, so this if condition is still true. The code will again run these lines, selecting a new random tone to play and playing that on port A5 for 70 milliseconds before skipping the else statement, reaching the bottom of the void loop, and jumping back up to check again. So this means that while press count equals 1, it's going to continue selecting random tones and playing that on port A5 until you press it again and press count is not equal to 1, at which case it's going to turn off your speaker, set press count equal to 0, and wait for you to press the button again.